For those of you who are joining us on YouTube, we are actually going to be getting into some amazing things tonight. Um, basically, uh, I can tell you that when I first started thinking about this message and started meditating on what it would consist of, uh, give me 1 second here. I uh I got scared, and you can see I'm a little bit fidgety and worried about the straightness of my hat and all that. Because this message has such ramifications. Sorry, my microphone is getting caught in my neck. Um, this message has such ramifications that I was afraid to teach it if my heart wasn't ready to live it. And so I have delayed for a number of months this teaching just because of that fact. So there's a couple things that we need to do. Um, we need to kind of lay some groundwork and do some recaps. So this may be a long one tonight just to get through the recaps. But once we get it recapped, we won't do it every week. You can start at Imagination Series number 1 and work your way through. So let's start at the beginning. What is preventing us from being not only effective, but being amazing? What's preventing us from being the most or the best version of ourselves? Well, of course, throughout the Renewing Your Mind series, I have said, number one, it's your wounds, right? And we went through the wounds part of the series, and the wounds part of the series kind of revealed to us that we create the wound. Yeah, somebody may injure you. Trauma may occur of some sort. But the truth is the construct that we go through in our mind is actually our perception of what the person thought about us. I want you to think about the ruthlessness and the um the inhumaneness of, say, the Holocaust. It's a shock to the mind, right? But what I want you to think about is the attitude that somebody had to have towards another human being to execute that. But now I'm going to take it a step further. That attitude demonstrated a language that wasn't necessarily spoken in words of the opinion that they had of a person, right? The problem, though, is that we are stuck as human beings in something that is just like this loop that continues to play over and over again. As human beings, we care about what others think of us. However, we do not adjust our process in our head according to what they say or do, but instead what we think they think of us. We create a construct in our mind of what they think of us, and we react to that. A person can tell a person, I love you all day long. But if they think in their mind that they're cheating on them and they don't love them, it doesn't matter how much a person would say it, whether it was true or not. A person could say, you know what, I'm the most loyal employee in this company, And it wouldn't matter if the manager thought that the employee thought that they were getting away with something, they would treat that employee a certain way because they think that they're getting away with something. Regardless of the words coming out of the employee or the actions being demonstrated. Wounds have a tendency to give us a false information, and that's going to be a very important point in some of what we're talking about. So when we're talking about wounds, you need to know that you actually create the wound yourself by forming an opinion about yourself based upon the information fed to you from the person who is obviously operating in a deceitful state to begin with, because that's actually not who you are, and you're worthy of better treatment than that. Then we got into the concept that there were three areas that we needed to get our minds wrapped around. The first one was what? Who told you you were naked? You told you you were naked. Where are your accusers? Go look in the mirror. And finally, it's not what you do that defines who you are, but what you believe about yourself is exactly what you'll do. That's wounds. Then we moved on to limiting beliefs. And in the limiting beliefs part of the series, we discussed what it meant to be stuck in a life trap, to get in such a state of belief about yourself that you make little micro adjustments throughout your life to attract to yourself the thing that is going to cause you to be in that trap. So if you have a fear of failure or you believe that you could fail, then you will actually attract to yourself people who will cause you to fail. Now, the intrigue in that is that think about how many people are attracting how many things to themselves around the entire world. Then we start to get into some crazy ideas about what is actually swaying the world. And then finally, of course, then we talked, and I can tell you, I haven't necessarily put it into the Renewing Your Mind series yet, but I preach a message on Shabbat about probably 3 weeks ago about entitlement. Entitlement prevents you from being amazing, prevents you from walking in your fullest potential. Why? Because you have a nerve to think that you merit anything. Remember, I said in that teaching, I could clear your entire house out with your bad merits. If we were to assign each asset you own to one of your bad deeds, I could clean you out. You have earned nothing. You deserve nothing. However, at the same time, you need to feel entitled to the royal abundance offered to those who are not only obedient to God, but to those who actually believe that they are children of God. Remind you that in the introduction, I said, children of God do God things, right? Not human things, God things. Okay. So that's kind of a recap on what we had going on there. But what you guys don't know and don't realize is how powerfully integrated into all that mess is your imagination. And that is where we're going to begin this. We're going to begin this with how we currently use our imagination. Okay. So the premise is that basically what we need to gather in and really start to grasp is that you are actually in a state of using your imagination to bring about death, darkness, and calamity upon yourself, your family, your community, this earth. The reason why this is so important is because we do not properly use our brains and visualization the way that we are supposed to. The intrigue is in the fact that there is an extraordinary, listen, for every action of process in the supernatural realm and in the physical realm, there is a cost of energy. And what I mean by that is some sort of energy is exerted to activate your imagination. Some sort of energy is exerted to activate the things that I'm talking about. The life traps, the wounds, the entitlement. Energy is spent doing those things. Vital energy and time. Did you know that the average human daydreams upwards of 75% of their time? Literally, while you're awake, you are not present and you are actually looking at images and pictures in your mind, perhaps some audio and perhaps some kinesthetic feedback from your body concerning those things. But either way, we spend all day creating these constructs. That's 3/4 of your time thinking about something that doesn't exist. And in that process and in that whole environment is not a healthy operation. Quite literally, this is one of those things, right? Remember at the beginning of the series, I said, you could stop watching YouTube right now because I'm about to give you the answer to everything that I'm about to teach you over these 7, 8, 9, 10, however many weeks it's been now. This is another one of those moments. You use your imagination for evil. And that's exactly what Yahweh said it was. He said, their imaginations are evil from childhood continually. Now, we have the privilege in After His Heart Ministries, and perhaps maybe there are others out there who have actually discovered this, but for us, it was amazing. We know that the word evil does not mean malevolence, but instead a twisted and weak mind. And we also know that the light, when it says in Genesis chapter 1, verse 3, let there be light, we know that that word doubles or perhaps is actually a strong mind. The reason why this is so important is because you're going to find out why your mind is weak and why you are someone who can be manipulated and you are someone who can be moved by words and emotion. And when I say moved, it's actually going to surprise you. A good 90% of those daydreams are not about the past. 10% of your daydreams have something to do with rehashing. Okay. So remember, 75, 3/4 of your day is spent processing constructs. 10% of that goes towards rehashing, reliving, and recreating a scenario and thinking about how it would have went different. The other 90% is about the future. And I'm going to tell you right now, for those of you who have not yet had your minds trained, knowing the difference between good and evil, like it says in Hebrews chapter 5, are actually creating negative constructs. So here's how it works. First of all, Yeshua says, take no thought for tomorrow, what you will eat, what you will drink, and what you will wear. And then he explains how these birds and Solomon and all and the lilies of the valley and all these other things all are better, are amazing, and how much more important are you? And how can you add one single day to your life? Yeshua told you not to daydream about tomorrow, but he very clearly said, do not worry. So what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to not worry. But here's the crazy part about it. Once you step into this, you can no longer permit yourself to do otherwise, and I'm going to explain why. First of all, let's talk about reality for a moment. Let's strip away the junk. Let's strip away the lies about what we actually do with our brains and what we truly don't want other people to know. And that is that we're fake, that we create masks for people to see, images for people to look upon, versus what we actually are and have. And the amount of maintenance on those false images expends an extraordinary amount of energy. And the amount of anxiety you experience for fear that somebody might actually figure it out expends even more energy. And here's the irony. For the people who actually start to see through the mask, we expend an extraordinary amount of energy setting boundaries with them instead of who we need to be setting boundaries with. We set boundaries with them to prevent them from looking any further. Somebody who can see into your soul is the one who's not allowed in your group. The one who can actually be critical of your actions and your processes and of your vulnerabilities, you exclude. Now, I know that there are probably people who are saying, well, no, that's actually not true. I do accept constructive criticism. No, you don't. I promise you don't. I don't. And I'm really good at constructive criticism. I actually enjoy being challenged and realizing that I erred so that I can turn to something even better than what I was. And I'm constantly in a state of trying to do that. And I fail. But I'm telling you right now, I'm still that hypocrite. I still put that mask on. I still set those boundaries, and I still have anxiety about the truth. And I'll tell you why. And it's a really simple truth. I can't imagine actually getting what I want. And so instead, I create scenarios, and those scenarios then become processes with other people to synthesize receiving what I want. And in addition to that, I manipulate, I coerce, I threaten to get what I want. Because I'm not willing to believe or imagine receiving exactly what I ask for. In fact, you're going to find out through this series that you do something really, really horrible. You ask for something, and then you start fearing that you're not going to get it, and you actually react to those fears in such a way that you bring about the downfall of that process of it being brought to you. At the very least, create a delay, and at the very most, cancel it completely with your actions that are actually reactions to fear. We're going to get into that in a minute. I said that this was the moment, right? And what was the moment? That you actually create negative constructs with your mind and not positive ones. And it's in its simplicity, you actually use your mind for evil only continually. When Yeshua came to this earth, he came to give to us, a people, a new way of thinking. It was not passivism. It was not vigilantism. It was not suffering. It was not sacrifice. It was that you are something special and higher, and he was going to prove it with his own death. And here's the irony. That's exactly what he said to Nicodemus. The most quoted scripture in the entire world is so misunderstood, it's not even funny. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whomsoever should believe in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Not only do you, I promise, not know what everlasting life actually is, but also you don't understand the level of depth of that scripture. So I know that I'm doing the whole accuser thing tonight, right? And I asked you with your wound part of the series, where are your accusers? But what I am doing tonight, I promise you, is not accusing, but instead just showing you behind the curtain. I am showing you a reality that you, up until now, have probably not been willing to access. So let's talk a minute about emotion. Let's talk about cognition. Let's talk about kinesthetic feedback from the body. Okay. So first of all, it is very important to understand that all emotions is hormonal reactions to cognitions. So then what we need to ask ourselves is, what are cognitions? Cognitions are little picture shows that we create in our mind that we call thoughts. We don't realize this, but every single thought is actually a image that you've created in your mind. You see. You're taking a test, you see the answer. Now, some people have a reference system that filter that information into kinesthetic feedback, feeling, right? Audible feedback, hearing, right? Or visual feedback, seeing. But in the end, There's still pictures. There's still little movies or little photographs of our mind in process. Now, when we're talking about emotion, you need to understand that it's all it is a hormonal response to cognition. I know emotions feel a certain way, but you need to understand that's the result of the chemicals being released. If you're sad, you've had a reuptake of serotonin and probably an extra dose of GABA. If you are joyful and happy, you probably have an taking in or receiving of dopamine. Now, a reuptake of dopamine would be a different story, or an inhibitor of dopamine would be a different story. But for happiness and joy, we're experiencing dopamine, maybe some serotonin, right? Every emotion is a hormonal reaction and these hormonal areas that the hormones are released from correspond to where the emotion actually comes from. For example, let's say we talk about the emotion of anger. Anger is actually a combination of adrenaline, epinephrine, and some other minor hormones that have to do with creating fast twitch in the muscles, etc., etc. But anger is actually the same exact chemicals present for fight or flight. That's right. Anger has the same exact chemical reaction as fear. But where is adrenaline being released from? Right here, right? Right here, right above your kidneys. So where is all of anger and fear going to manifest itself as an emotion, but out from the gut, right? And it's going to project outwards from the gut. Now, in terms of our biofields, that then becomes some frequency of process out of our brain waves as we begin to react to that original cognition. But every single hormone that's activated in the state of emotion is the result of cognition, not the other way around. You think it, you feel it. Okay? It's a gift to give us attachment to our cognitions, or what we call emotional attachment to thought. Emotional attachments that are in a negative state result in bitterness and resentment and vindication. Emotional attachments in a positive state create love, create benevolence, create peacefulness. It is very important to understand that your emotions are not sustained because your cognitions change over a day's time so many times it's not even funny. Why is all this so important? Well, here's the first part. We are going to talk a minute about why want or desire occurs in the first place, but then we're also going to talk about how we create constructs, okay? So take, for example, one day you are walking along and you see a vehicle. Say you're on a walk on a sidewalk and you see a vehicle drive by on the road and you desire that vehicle. You say, man, I really like that vehicle. I like the curves on it. I like how sleek it looks, or I like how tough it looks, or whatever. And you begin to think about that you want. that vehicle. Now, what you don't realize is that there are hundreds of vehicles passing you on the road, but that one vehicle became desirable. And you think that that's coincidental. You think that's happenstance. So the first thing that you do is you go, well, I could never afford something like that. But what you don't realize is what you've done in your brain already is thought about the price, saw the numbers, maybe heard them, maybe felt something as you experienced the picture. But the premise is that you thought about how much that vehicle must cost. And in your mind, you instantaneously started getting into your bank account and seeing the numbers in your bank account and knowing that you could not afford that vehicle. Now, here's the part that's crazy. If you want it, most likely it probably was meant for you. Think of it from the point of view of when you want to give a gift to your child and you're not sure whether they'll like it or not. And so in our wonderful ways of deception and manipulation, we'll create little constructs, little imaginations, and speak them to the child to try to get a read on what their reaction is to it. That's right. We will be deceptive because really the conversation is not actually coming from the heart per se, but it's instead an information gathering tactic. And in that process, as we pull that information in, we begin to see that maybe they don't want that thing. So now we got to go, well, wouldn't it be cool if you could actually do this with that item? We begin to try to what? Create a desire in our child to want the thing that we want to give them. Now, for those of you who believe in science and don't really accept the premise of an intensification of all power in the universe that has intelligence, or an intelligent designer, creator, a God, I will say that you need to think about this more along the lines of the idea that somewhere in that process, you have a purpose in wanting the things that you want. In other words, you have this certain temperament within you. Now, I'm trying to speak your language for a moment, even though that I'm speaking to people who have a better understanding of these things only because they believe in the intensification of all power in the universe as an intelligent creator being. But for those of you who don't believe, I want you to think about it this way. I want you to think about that basically your mind has concluded that there's a purpose behind that thing that you actually want. And that it is not actually about some random happenstance of desire, but that there's an actual plan in your learnings along your life for it. Not from the point of view of some designer, because you don't believe in that, but from the point of view of little temperaments, little raisings, little environmental influences. The reason I bring this up about unbelievers is because I know that there's some people who watch my channel because I mix spirituality and science. And I don't want to lose people in the idea of determinism, because I need to make very clear that when it comes to the free will of a man and his desires, there isn't necessarily a predetermined built-in mechanism that tells you you want that car. but instead a purpose that is actually created as a result of you desiring that car. I know that sounds off the wall. And I know that probably some people aren't ready to receive the idea that you come up with a construct and the universe responds. But wait, there's more. So when we are talking about wounds and we are talking about a lack of imagination, I want you to think about the last time that you reacted to something or someone because they triggered a trauma or a damage, emotional, mental, physical, spiritual in your life. I want you to think about the last time you reacted to a trigger. And I want you to ask yourself, was the trigger real? I want you to think about this. Most of the people in our lives that we are surrounded with, we attracted in some way. Our circle of influence is definitely because we are able to influence that circle. In other words, people either look up to us or they like what they hear or they're somehow interested. In fact, the word, the etymology of the word relationship is relatianas shape. Okay, relatianas shape. So is that there's a repeating. Latianus is coming from lateral movement, not latitude, lateral movement. In other words, a movement horizontally. So what? To repeat a movement horizontally to what? Ionis, to the attraction. Okay. And then shape being basically a state of being. It's an old English word that means you're in that state of what? Wanting to return laterally to the condition. Okay, Ionis is condition. Whenever we use shun on the end of a word, it's a condition. It's a conditional state. Okay. All right. So basically, in principle, then the way that I want you to think about this is anytime that we are in connection with another person, we create a desire for them to return to us again and experience that condition. There's an if-then statement there. If that condition exists, they would like to return. And so in the process of conditioning, right? Think Pavlov's dog. In the process of conditioning, we are moving forward towards that which we experienced because we had some sort of positive reaction to it. And why is that important? Because then what you understand is the people that you've attracted to you are probably people that you have demonstrated benevolence towards and not malevolence, because malevolence has a tendency to create discomfort, and we are creatures of comfort. If we experience discomfort, our brains, our minds, our imaginations, our feet, and our bodies move away from discomfort. Now, we don't always move towards comfort, but we do not stay in discomfort. Discomfort creates anomalies in our body that we do not enjoy. Meaning what? Any person in your circle of influence that you have a relationship with, you created some form of benevolence with. Meaning what? If you are connected with them and they with you, then both parties demonstrated there was some sort of demonstrative element of positive energy. however brief, because there's people in my circle of influence who I don't necessarily want to interact with very often. But I can tell you, in its entirety, they probably are not there to hurt you. Now, there's a small probability that they are, and I'm not going to get into that. What I'm going to lean towards is that if somebody has triggered a trauma trigger in you and you have become reactive, and instead of allowing yourself to be vulnerable, you actually operate in such a way as to create a boundary towards your own family members, your own friends, your own loved ones, your own spouse, your own children, because they triggered you. When the truth is, they're not being malevolent like the person who hurt you to begin with. But what's our imagination do? Oh, don't talk to me like that. My father used to talk to me like that. Oh, no, you can't do that. You can't put your feet on the furniture because you were raised to believe you couldn't put your feet on the furniture. And it's a wound because you wanted to put your feet on the furniture and there's something behind it, right? That's the use of your imagination. Your imagination created a construct in which that person is actually going to do the same thing to you that that person did. True or false? Because remember, it's not their actions or words that you believe. It's what you think they think about you, what you imagine they think about you, that actually takes. So the emotional reaction occurs, the trauma trigger occurs, same emotions, the same dissociation, the same hyper focus, the same sentience, and they're not malevolent. And in your state of reaction to them, you actually are stating an opinion about them that's not true, and therefore you have become their accuser as a result of your imagination. That is sick. And you do it every day. Every day we react. Every day we have that moment when we have had an outburst or a process of emotional state towards a person who's not the actual person who caused the original emotional state. And we feel justified. And we have actually sometimes even believe the lie we tell ourselves that they could be doing the same thing, that they are actually a threat, or worse yet, in your entitlement, a resource, but not a manifestation of the intensification of all power in the universe as a source and force of benefit in your life, actual emanation of benevolence to you. Do you see now how imagination works with wounds and how there is actually absolute malevolence going on because you become the accuser of the brethren, the dragon, the serpent of old, that old devil. It's a darkness that you don't understand about yourself as a result of what? Your original twisted mind. I want you to hear this verse again, and it says, I will not strive with them anymore because they are evil from childhood continually. But what does it actually say? Their mind is twisted from childhood continually. Do you see? Now, don't get me wrong. The life trap will attract the malevolent beings to prevent you from breaking out and becoming effective. The limiting beliefs and the life trap, that pulling in and holding you where you do attract an abuser again. But I'm going to tell you something. Sometimes, and this is going to sound really, really harsh, sometimes you don't attract an abuser, you create one. You say, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. No, hear me out. If you tell a person enough times that they are a thing, they will believe it and they will what? Become it. And so if you react to a person a certain way because they trigger you, they are going to take those cues and become reactive to them. Some of those cues may not have a self-control behind them. And some of those cues may not or may also have trauma triggers behind them, which means we have two reactive forces reacting to each other, and that just turns into a mess. Now, when I say create an abuser, what I mean is even if a person is maybe changed or perhaps even never actually done those things, push them and push them and push them until they actually begin to react the way that the person did who created the problem in the first place. But really, it was a wound you created, a construct you created because you believed what you think they thought about you. Remember, it is not what you do that makes you who you are. But what you believe about yourself is what you will do. And if you believed the lie that you were told about you through somebody's actions, you will do it. And that becomes very dangerous, doesn't it? You see now how you use your imagination to perpetuate your wounds. An absolute force of destruction that was a gift, a human endowment, okay? A human endowment. Even evolutionists believe that we have human endowments. A human endowment of imagination. And look what we use it for. So is it that you were born evil? No. It's that you believed lies and you get trapped in that lie because you believe it, right? And then we have something called confirmation bias. Let me warn you. Confirmation bias is so dangerous that it has created world wars. Confirmation bias is so dangerous that it has actually given people permission to treat one race better than another or worse than another. Confirmation bias has broken up marriages. Confirmation bias has actually created separation between parents and children, between siblings, between friends, between spouses, because confirmation bias is a false positive on an imagination. Let me give you an example of confirmation bias. A man goes to work. He's normally not late. While he is at work, his family calls and says, hey, we need you to come to the hospital right now. Your mom's in the hospital. This is before cell phones and he doesn't have a chance to make the phone call. And so he runs to the hospital to be with his mom. All this whole time, his wife is at home. She's prepared dinner. She's got everything ready to go. And there has been a number of arguments and fights that have created a little bit of emotional separation. And she has kind of concluded that maybe he might be seeing somebody else. Now, all of a sudden, he's not coming home. And so she creates this entire construct of him meeting this woman and them going out to eat and all these things. And she says, "Oh yeah, I'll know because there will be, you know, there will be a stain from the food on his pants because he wipes his hands on his pants." Well, on his way home from seeing his mom, he gets a bucket of chicken and eats it on the way home and wipes his hands on his pants. And so when he gets home and there's grease on his pants, he's been messing around. And she believes it because it's confirmed. That's confirmation bias. It's when you get a false positive to reinforce a false construct. What is a construct? A construct is a creation in your mind of something that actually doesn't exist. False realities, false opinions, false accusations, of all these imaginations about what people are, who they are, how they do things. We have imaginations about what they're worth. We have imaginations about what they are as a resource or what we need to defend ourselves against them. Not once ever knowing who they are. Confirmation bias is dangerous. And when you are dealing with wounds, it is a very slippery slope because a person can trigger you and they're pure of heart. And you will think they're malevolent and you'll look for the confirmations that they are. You will actually imagine and then try to find the proofs of. Do you see this? Do you see how sick this is? We have a $1 million industry, if not more, present, even just in my city, of mental health professionals where people go and they talk about what's been done wrong to them. And that's it. And there is actually no healing. And their counselor, psychologist, psychiatrist tells them, "Oh, well, you are actually bipolar," or, "Oh, well, you are actually borderline." And then they go and they use that as a justification to perform actions that are inappropriate as a result of their wounds, literally feeling entitled to treat a person a certain way and act a certain way because they are wounded. Yes, this gets into entitlement, and we'll address entitlement, not tonight. I know that you probably have the impression that these messages are prepared. But the truth is that all I knew is that I was going to speak about imagination concerning wounds tonight. But what's really, really important is I want you to think about who told you were naked. Where did Adam get the information that he was naked? He imagined it. He pictured God being offended that his eyes were open. We will get into the fear aspect of it eventually, but please understand, if you are dwelling within your wounds, you're going to hurt somebody else. And I'm going to tell you that you're going to think up the way to hurt them. And you're thinking in your mind, "Oh, I'm not that kind of person. I don't plan to hurt people." Yes, you do. You just don't realize that you do. You don't realize that you go through a series of imaginations about a person triggering your wound and then feeling like you have a right or entitlement to act against that. And that person could be pure of heart, and 9 times out of 10 is pure of heart. The actual idea that every single person is out to get you is actually a construct in your mind. Do you know that you imagine more about the person who you fear than the person does who has made you afraid? You spend more time and more energy creating constructs about that person than they do about you. That's scary. There is so much energy spent on false imaginations, false images. You know, when we get into the ancient pictographic Hebrew, which we're probably not tonight, but we could potentially get into it later on, I'm going to tell you that the word worship has nothing to do with music. It has nothing to do with the movement of your hands or the way that you shape your body. Doesn't matter whether you were on your knees or not. Now, in ancient times, it would. But that also has something to do with culture, doesn't it? It doesn't necessarily have to do with process. In fact, worship is a handshake. The premise behind worship is giving weightiness or glory, assigning value to something more than yourself. That's a scary thought. Because what I want you to think about is how much energy you expend imagining confirmation biases about your wounds and about those who are in relationship with you because of a mutual connection of benevolence. A mutual connection of benevolence. Now, remember, I said there are some malevolent people, malevolent beings that you may attract to yourself through your life trap, but don't think that every single last human you attract to yourself is your life trap. That's not what I said. I never said that every single thing you attract to yourself is your life trap. I said you will attract people who will confirm your life trap. You have no idea how important that information is. You have no idea how badly you have treated innocent people because of your wounds and your confirmation biases, your constructs, your false images in your head that you refuse to look at as being illogical, irrational, inappropriate, distorted, and not okay. But just accept because it's in your mind and it makes sense. It's no wonder we really actually have any form of justice in this universe as a result of the processes that humans go through in their brains. I don't know if it's even possible for there to be an actual legitimate jury of your peers. Why? Because they're going to operate off of their wounds, confirmation biases, and constructs, not off of fact. They're being asked to be objective when their life experiences play a role in their decision about another human being. You can't be objective. It's not possible. We have way too much baggage. We have way, way too much information already stored. So when Paul said, do not conform to the ways of this world, what I want you to think about is what Yeshua said to the non-believing Jews. They did not know he was the Messiah, okay? They walk away and they say, this man speaks with authority, not like our teachers. They didn't know who he was, right? You are the light of the world. Paul says, do not be conformed to the ways of the world. So if he's telling these non-believing Jews that they are the light of the world, there were no Gentiles there. He tells these non-believing Jews that they are the light of the world. You are the strong minds of the world. Now, was that gospel, that narrative written for us? Of course. And so are we the light of the world as well? Yes, of course. It's a given, right? Everything that he taught and said was for everyone in the world for all time. But he tells it to these people who don't even believe he's the Christ. You are the light of the world. Go be the light of the world, right? What is the world? I would say that if I had to surmise what the world is, it's the general consensus of collective conscious minds who all operate in the same process of deleting, distorting, generalizing, justifying, rationalizing, telling lies, creating constructs, and looking for confirmation biases. The world is the world of. Remember, the world is evil. It's actually said. Or is it? So, in principle, then, as we begin to understand that when he says you are a strong mind, you are the light, then he's speaking to your potential because you are already way screwed up. If you want to know what happened, you need to start looking at when it became okay to be wounded and wound others. You need to start looking at your own life and understanding you are the problem in this world. You are the evil that is causing the problem. Not because you're some malevolent being. I don't perceive that that should be the general consensus of our thought process. We weren't born malevolent. Now, some people talk about psychological predispositions and all of this stuff. And you know what? I think probably they need to go heal from their mommy issues. But I can tell you that when you perpetuate a wound with vain, or what I should call false imaginations about another, and then believe confirmations that are confirmation biases, which are more constructs, right? They're fake. They're not real. And the truth is one of the reasons why this is so prevalent and powerful is because we're in a constant state of trying to present that image, which is also a construct. Is it the real you? No, you're never going to show your vulnerabilities. Are you kidding me? We live in probably one of the most fearful generations that has ever existed. We're scared of our own shadow. And we get these weekends where you believe that they're going to go and do something about it. And the truth is that they're just as terrified of others finding out the actual truth about their vulnerabilities, about their wounds, about their likes and dislikes, because we secretly like stuff that is not okay. That just contributes to the damage, which is probably the result of our wounds. We find a lot of reward in intrigue. That's why Hollywood is wrought with spy movies and subterfuge and sabotage and betrayal and relationship damage. In a lot of ways, our entertainment is a reflection of our true minds. And in a lot of ways, it's our true desires, or we wouldn't watch it. I know that that is hard. And I know in your brain, you're going, man, if you're having the open mind, right? If you're listening to me, then you're probably going, man, do I watch that show because I really want to be that way? Yeah, you do. Mhm. Yeah, you are entertained by it because it's the actual you. But that's only because of your wounds, limiting beliefs, and entitlements. I promise you, you are not a malevolent being. Okay? Malevolent beings have a whole nother story. Now, do you have a dynamic of a percentage of malevolence and a percentage of benevolence? Sure. Does one override the other? Sure. Look back to that ancient Indian proverb about feeding the two wolves. But please understand that that scripture in Genesis does not say that man is evil continually, but that his imaginations are evil and violence. His imaginations are evil and violence continually. And that Hebrew word for violence is Hamas. When we get into the we're not going to do it this week, but when we get into the Hebrew word for imagination, machashavet, you are going to learn a lot about the power behind it that you have been activating in a very malevolent way. But for tonight, we're going to end here, and I'm going to potentially open this up for discussion in the Zoom call, and we're gonna go ahead and end here on YouTube, and I'm going to encourage you to tune in next time for the next Renewing Your Mind series, Imagination mini series, because I promise you, if you think you do bad with your wounds, you should see what you do with your limiting beliefs. And if you think you do bad with your limiting beliefs, you should see what you do with your entitlements. That is a very, very scary subject. Having said that, I will tell you, YouTube, I hope that you got something out of this tonight. I hope that it has been an eye-opener for you. I have been so afraid to teach this message because I don't know if I'm ready to actually start living it. But of recent, I've realized that I am ready and that I'm going to do the best I can. And that's all you can do, is the best you can. But it has to be your honest best, right? It has to be truthful. It has to come from within. It cannot be your image. It cannot be a process of your dysfunction, a masking of your wounds. You have to get real. But for tonight, I will say shalom. I allow you to